Hey there, thanks so much for checking out this session. I'm Steven, I'm over here at Bloomerang, and we're going to be talking about donor engagement in uncertain times. I got some data, some case studies to share with you on just what we've seen amongst our customer set, folks who are raising a lot of money and have been doing pretty well despite all that's going on in the world, especially in those early months, that late March, kind of early April time period. So let's dive right in. We're recording this session, we're pre-recording it, but I'll hang out afterwards for Q&A. I'd love to answer your questions live. So just a little bit about me real quick, just for context. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer over at Bloomerang, which is kind of a fancy title. Basically, I do things like this. I do a lot of case studies, share a lot of data that we're seeing, not just amongst our customers, but other research that we're interested in and involved in over at Bloomerang. And yeah, just love talking about this stuff. If you're interested in Bloomerang, check us out. We're a donor database. We're pretty easy to find online. I'm not going to talk too much about Bloomerang in this session, but just for context, that's what we're all about. So I've got some concrete takeaways for you from this presentation, and I just kind of want to touch on them real quick before we dive into each. We're going to spend some time on all five of these here. But my main sort of advice to you during this time, and there doesn't seem to be much of a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of social distancing and all these things we're dealing with, virtual events. Can we do events? The economic impact certainly out there. There's a lot of uncertainty, but my main thing, and we'll talk about this a lot over the hour, is don't stop fundraising. I want to encourage you to not kind of outsmart yourself and say, well, there's a lot of economic uncertainty. There's a lot of pain out there. Maybe we should, take a back seat to fundraising and stay on the sidelines. Don't want you to do that. I'm going to share with you a lot of stories of people that have really kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and taken advantage of what, you could consider to be a little bit of an opportunity. We're going to talk a lot about communication segmentation, making sure you are delivering different types of communications to different types of people based on who's in your database, who follows you, what kind of donors you have. We're going to talk about that. I talk a lot about stewardship. We've seen stewardship be really effective during this time. It's always effective, but has been especially effective in these past few months, especially when you employ the personal touch in those stewardship efforts, picking up the phone, writing handwritten notes, things like that. And then, of course, a hot topic, we're going to talk about events, what you should do there. Should you cancel? Should you postpone? Go virtual? I'm going to share with you a few case studies. And speaking of case studies, all of these takeaways I'm going to be talking about, they come straight from the source. One thing I did early on in April is we were noticing a good segment of our customer base that was raising a lot of money. We were seeing kind of these big blips on the radar, way more money than they raised in the same period of 2019, which is kind of a normal fundraising year, despite all that was going on. So I reached out to a lot of these folks and said, hey, I noticed you seem to be doing really well. What's going on? What is it that is making you successful? And I had some really interesting conversations with these 8 organizations. You can visit the website when you have free time, maybe when you're done watching this session, and you can listen in on my conversations with these fundraisers who kind of share their secret formula, what worked for them, how they overcame event cancellations. Even now, a few months later, what they say is still relevant and is encouraging and inspiring. So I would check out those stories, but I'm going to kind of pull some tidbits from each of them as I talk about some of the things that I saw that were sort of recurring themes in all of these conversations. And the number one recurring theme, there's a reason it's number one, is all of them kept fundraising. They kept their foot on the gas, so to speak, and didn't say, well, maybe it's the wrong time to fundraise. We're not the right type of organization. I've seen a lot of that. I'm still seeing that. We're recording this in July, and it still seems to be a little bit of a chronic issue. Maybe your board member or your boss is saying, can't fundraise right now. It's not appropriate. Well, I want to really encourage you. I get kind of fired up about this. Don't do that. Don't decide for your donors. It's one thing to go out and ask and get a no. That's okay. But if you decide for them that we're not going to ask, that doesn't seem right to me. And a lot of this stems from, oh, we're an arts organization. We're not a food bank. We're not a social service. We're not out there saving lives. And those organizations are worthy, but every organization, I think, is worthy right now, whether you're environmental or an animal shelter. All those people who have supported you and care about those causes, they still care about the cause. They still support you. And a lot of them probably want you to be around, when this all ends, which is hopefully soon. We were talking about this on a webinar in early April, and someone raised their hand and chatted in and said, we're just a library foundation. We feel like it's not a good time for us to fundraise. We're not saving lives. We're not providing, masks or meals to people who need them. And I got fired up. I said, no, you're awesome. You're doing great things. I got a couple kids running around that have been, stuck inside for months and months. And we used to go to the library, every week, every Saturday morning. It was kind of our part of our routine. And we missed that. And, if our library were to reach out to us and say, hey, we want to be around, we want to get back to normalcy, and you can be a part of that, I would absolutely support that. It doesn't take away from anyone who's providing medical services or anything like that. So don't sit on the sidelines. So that's my personal opinion, but we've also got the data to back it up. We looked at our customer set who was actively sending out emails in March, in April, in those early days of the crisis. And it probably won't surprise you that the people who were sending appeal emails were getting more money, we're getting more donations from those recipients than the people who weren't. But not just that, but among the people who were sending emails, but weren't sort of contextualizing it for the current crisis, that's that middle graph, the middle bar on each of the graphs. They were outperformed by organizations who were also sending emails, but were sort of contextualizing it and addressing the crisis directly. So not only should you fundraise, but you should also kind of address the elephant in the room. We're in crisis. These are the changes we're making in the organization to keep people safe or to keep our services going. And we need help. We want you to be a part of that. So I've got lots of data, more on these links. You can click the links and read kind of the more underlying data there. But also external data, philanthropy.com, the Chronicle, they put out an interesting study that showed differences in percentages of donors who were participating pre-COVID and during COVID. And there were, a couple percentage points differences, but for the majority of organizations, especially social human services, faith-based, and of course, healthcare, medical, in healthcare, there was actually an improvement from 32% to 33%. So I think it's kind of a myth that, people aren't giving right now. And sure, the economy is tough and some people are going through tough circumstances for sure. But some people aren't, and some people are actually thriving depending on maybe what kind of business they're in or what their sort of pre-existing capacity or wealth was. So again, it's okay if you get a no, but you're definitely not going to get a yes if you don't ask. So don't be afraid. All of you are worthy of support no matter what you do. I have no doubt about it. There is one thing that we saw folks do before going out and asking, and that is just to simply update your constituents. And I know it's been a few months since those initial days where these examples come from, but it's not too late to be sending out those updates, to be letting people know, hey, this is what's going on. These are the changes that are happening. These are the pivots we've made, and we still need help, and you can be a part of that. So hopefully you were updating people early, but it's not too late to do that, certainly. And I'm sure that there are frequent changes going on within your organizations during this, weird time. So definitely be updating those people. Now, when it comes to communicating to your constituencies, this is another thing that popped up in all 8 of those conversations, those case studies. All 8 of them employed some kind of communication segmentation. So before I jump into those specific examples, I want to kind of define the term and give you an idea of what it is I'm actually talking about here. In its simplest form, all segmentation is you're communicating differently to your different types of supporters. And all of you have really different types of supporters. I don't have to look into your database to know that. It's just the nature of every single nonprofit, really any organization, whether it be B2C, B2B, or or nonprofits. So let me give you an example. This is Heather Carroll. She is the ED up at a public school foundation in New York State. She uses Bloomerang, which is why I know about her. Although this isn't, you can do this in most systems, even if you don't use Bloomerang. So she's kind of the queen of segmentation. I think it's her goal actually to like break Bloomerang. She's trying really hard. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be her. But so they're a public school foundation. So they have a lot of different types of people who support them. They've got parents of the kids that are in the district right now, the grandparents of those kids in some cases. They've got people who live in the district but don't have kids in the school system. They want to communicate to those people in a different way. They have some of the kids themselves who have since graduated and gone on and entered the workforce, keeping up with them. So they had all these different kind of types of personas. And then they also look at those personas in terms of, do they give? When was the last time they gave? How much do they give? So they've never given. They're a first-time donor, haven't given again. They give us every single year. They give monthly, perhaps. So Heather will communicate to all those different segments differently and kind of contextualize all of those pieces based on the type of recipient that they are. This may seem overwhelming, like, oh, geez, I got to create 20 different thank you letters and 20 different appeal letters and newsletters and stewardship pieces. Most of them, at a quick glance, look pretty similar. You don't have to totally reinvent the wheel. Most of the time, all they do is just kind of address in the beginning what kind of recipient they are, right? Dear Stephen, as a parent of a current third grader in the district, firsthand the value that we're providing, versus maybe someone who doesn't have a kid in the district. We know you're not a parent, but you probably want to contribute to the good educational system of the community. I'm not a great copywriter, you can probably surmise that, but basically that's all you really have to do. It just kind of shows the recipient that you are paying attention by sort of contextualizing who they are, where they're at in the support. Heather, as a monthly donor, we just want to thank you so much for that support that you give us. We're coming to you again in a special time, in a time of crisis. We could use some extra help. We know you give monthly, but we would love for you to contribute to this special campaign if you can. So just those kinds of things, versus sending the same one appeal to everyone on your list, regardless of how often they give, what type of person they are. That usually leads to sometimes alienation, right? If you ask a monthly donor and don't address the fact that they are a monthly donor, they may get that piece and say, why are they asking me? I'm already a monthly donor. Don't they know that? And they're not going to give, and you might actually alienate them in the process. So this is something not only we've seen in this particular customer be successful, but it also came up in all these conversations that I had while we were talking about kind of COVID fundraising. So here's one example that's more timely. This is an animal shelter up near Portland, Oregon. Had a great conversation with Sarah. She's in charge of their donor relations over there. Check out that interview, especially if you're in animal welfare. Really good conversation for sure. And one of the first things she said was, yeah, we use Bloomerang to segment all of our communications. And she talked about and kind of outlined this appeal that they did. This is one of the earlier crisis appeals that they did kind of late March, early April. And rather than, again, just emailing the whole list, she broke the list into 3 smaller buckets, kind of buckets that they were kind of meaningful to them. So they had lapsed donors, people who hadn't given in a while. There was some kind of time horizon, like, they gave in maybe early 2019, but haven't given since. Recent donors, so people that had given in 2020. So the idea there was they were kind of going back to those people somewhat quickly and asking again. And then current monthly donors, which is a good segment we're going to talk a lot about, going to them, again, addressing that monthly commitment and asking. So these are the 3 emails to those groups. And you kind of have to squint to see what the differences are. I know it's kind of small on your screen, but really it's just kind of that opening paragraph, again, addressing the type of segment that they are. So on the monthly one, it starts off by saying, thanks for being a monthly donor. You care about us, you're committed, but we're in trouble. We have an uncertain time right now. normally wouldn't ask you, but would you be willing to increase your monthly commitment? Versus the other two emails that just ask for a one-time gift. And again, kind of address the type of recipient that they are. So Sarah really swears by, and I'm inclined to agree that this appeal would not have been as successful as it was. And it was successful. They got a lot of monthly donors to upgrade, and then they got a lot of one-time gifts from the other emails. Wouldn't have been as successful if they hadn't segmented it. And I imagine, one of her monthly donors getting kind of a generic appeal, and again saying, I'm already a monthly donor. I don't need to give, I'm already in there, versus, hey, thanks for being a monthly donor. We need a little extra help. Would you be willing to, increase that commitment? And they did get a lot of those. So check that out if you want to kind of learn more about the campaign. Segmentation, there really isn't a bottom of this well. You can keep segmenting until you basically get down to a group of one donor if you want to go down that rabbit hole. I wrote a blog post about what I would consider segments that you should probably be paying attention to right now. So check that out. I won't really dive into it, take up too much time here, but a lot of these probably won't surprise you, right? We've talked about monthly donors. Your major donors, maybe you want to communicate to them a little bit special. You don't want to lose those people that have been giving for a long period of time. Most of those just addressing that support, right? Just saying, hey, we so appreciate that long-term support. Maybe volunteers, if you're an organization that has relied on in-person volunteers in the past, and that's not possible right now because of social distancing, can you do a special appeal, to just those folks? The point here is just these groups of people are getting a specific appeal. But a volunteer appeal, I imagine saying something like, hey, Stephen, we so appreciate your past volunteerism. We know you can't come on site. It's a bummer, but here's some other ways that you can help us, right? And it could be a monetary donation for sure, but maybe something else, maybe sharing things on social media or signing a petition or emailing a congressperson, lots of things that they could do. But again, it's contextualized and personalized for just that group. Another one I would really pay attention to, and we're going to dive into this, is brand new donors. If you've gotten new donations since mid-March, that's pretty significant, right? A new person has discovered you in a pretty tough time. And, it's a tough time for everybody in some ways. For them to choose you and choose to support you during tough economic times, for example, that's significant. I would especially pay close attention to your new donors. That's a really good segment at any time to do some very specific things with. I think with new donors, oftentimes they don't really get celebrated for making that new commitment and joining the family of donors. And I think that's one reason why we've seen first-time donor retention rates. This is data from FEP, the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. Over the past 5 years, new first-time donors, their retention rates have dropped year over year to just 20%. So 8 out of 10 brand new donors never give again. So if you can change that to 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, that's a lot of extra money kind of doled out over the lifetime of those donors. So one segment you might want to consider personalizing is that group, those new donors. Thank them, really thank their socks off in a lot of ways, right? Dear Stephen, thanks so much for your donation. I noticed it was your first donation. Wow, we're so happy that you've chosen to join our family of donors, of supporters. Get to know them. I think sometimes we suffer from a little bit of a lack of curiosity about these new donors. May not know much about them. Hey, Stephen, how did you find out about us? What interest do you have in the cause? Why do you care about, the watershed here? Why do you care about greyhounds that we're rescuing? Whatever that thing is, find out what makes them tick, and you can use that information in your future communications. But the main reason I would segment these people is kind of protect them from the rest of the stuff that you're sending to the rest of your donor base. Oftentimes these new donors, they get solicited too soon, right? They donate on July 27th, and you've got a summer appeal going out on August 1st. It's just scheduled, and they get thrown into the database. They get lumped into that group. They may even get appealed before you even thank them for that support. So kind of put them in a bubble, protect them a little bit, get to know them, but don't be shy about asking too soon. You don't have to ask on day 2, but I wouldn't wait much longer than day 90. We've got some interesting data to show that those first 90 days are kind of a sweet spot, kind of a honeymoon period, I've heard it described as. But get to know them, thank them, share those impact stories. And I think that second gift appeal will be much more likely to succeed. Maybe some of you are already doing this, but a welcome kit is a great example of segmentation. Just, a printed piece or a packet that only first-time donors get. That's the point here. They're the only group of people getting these specific communications. It can be a letter that only first-time donors get. It could be maybe a printed piece, a brochure, or a postcard. Maybe you include like a sticker or something fun that they can kind of a lightweight premium perhaps. But I like this one. This is from a private school here in Indy. I donated to them years ago for the first time and got this really nice welcome kit. Thank you for your first gift. So they're saying to the donor what kind of donor they are. That's really all you have to do to segment, is just say what kind of supporter they are. Thanks for being a monthly donor. Thanks for your first gift. Thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday, whatever. You can even address the channel if you want. Thanks for donating to that peer-to-peer campaign on Facebook. But I really like what this piece does. It sort of contextualizes the first donation to the first service recipient experiences, right? So they're a school. So first day of school, first field trip, first gift. So you got this nice connection between the donor and the service recipient. And then there's a nice invitation for a tour, to see your gift work through a personal visit or a tour, contact us. That may be a little more difficult now, but maybe it's a virtual tour. Maybe it's a special behind the scenes look at whatever your organization is doing. Maybe a Facebook Live that only new donors get invited to, or maybe a fireside chat with your ED. So think about what are some exclusive things we can offer these people to get I think the goal is to get to know them. I think that's why tours make so much sense for a new donor is, you're going to chit chat, you're going to get to know them, find out why they care about your cause. And then again, your communications afterwards are going to be, I think, much more effective. Another one, I started a monthly donation to Girls Inc. here in Indianapolis. Hey, thanks for, joining our monthly giving program. Nice letter, a little handwritten signature, brochure. And this is what I was thinking of with the premium. They sent a little seed packet, which I thought was clever. It kind of, it aligns with their mission. They're helping, girls, kind of blossom and grow into awesome adults. So it kind of made sense there. And they also sent their little Bill of Rights. So definitely a nice welcome kit. Another one I got from an environmental organization, again, handwritten note, nice printed piece. They sent their previous print newsletter that they only send, I think, quarterly, which I thought was kind of clever. Just say, hey, it may be a little while till you get the next newsletter, but here's the most recent edition, so you can kind of get caught up on what's going on. So you don't have to just stop at first-time donors. Monthly donors, again, maybe something special for them. And then, take some pen to paper and kind of think about who are the people that what are the significant groups or segments to us. Maybe it's corporate sponsors that you haven't been able to engage with because events are getting canceled and postponed and things like that. But communicate to these people differently. You don't want to do a one-size-fits-all approach by any means. Stewardship. So once you have hopefully gotten some donations from these people, you really want to make sure that they feel appreciated and that you're telling them impact stories. That appreciation and impact stories piece, that's not my opinion. That comes from a ton of research, not just this study, but this one I'm going to kind of explore with you, because I think it's a really good kind of primer for what donors want from us, what it is that keeps donors loyal. This is a study that was done back in 2011 by the Donor Voice, and they wanted to know, okay, these organizations that have high retention rates, that have donors that give year after year, why is it that they keep giving? What are they doing well? And what they found from those loyal donors is that, again and again, they cite things like, they tell us stories, they tell us how we're spending our money, they tell us who's being impacted. They thank us quickly. We feel appreciated, right? We feel like we're part of that organization. And as I was talking to those 8 organizations, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about this research, because all of their successful stewardship pieces and even their appeals were kind of rooted in those 7 or 8 concepts here. And I don't know if they had seen this research, or if that maybe it just kind of permeated the culture of the organization, but it's again and again. And if you watch those case studies, you'll see more of these email examples where they were doing those things. They were thanking, telling the stories, and really making current supporters feel appreciated for that support that they give. This is another email from that same humane animal shelter that did the 3 segmented appeals. This is one prior to that appeal. They actually sort of primed the pump with a nice thank you. It was an out of the blue thank you, wasn't tied to a recent gift. And they also segmented this. This is the stewardship piece that they sent to that group of monthly donors. They have 432 members of this monthly giving program. And early on in the crisis, they reached out to those monthly donors and just said, hey, I know things are crazy right now, but we're going to get through it. And it's all because of, sustaining monthly donors like you. We just wanted to say thanks. You are literally keeping the lights on. So maybe it was to head off potential cancellations of those monthly gifts. Maybe it was a way to kind of prime the pump for that appeal that came later on. Whatever it, in whatever way it resonated with those recipients, it seems to have paid off, because that subsequent appeal that I showed you before was really successful. They did get a lot of people to upgrade. So thanking people out of the blue, telling them a random impact story. Hey, just wanted to tell you about this animal that got adopted recently. And, their lives, that dog's life was saved because of supporters like you, kind of apropos of nothing. Another thing you might want to consider when it comes to stewardship is maybe reaching out individually to some high level donors, to some of your major donors, or people that you really want to hang on to, that are true believers or longtime supporters. I won't go into it, but I would encourage you to read this blog post that my buddy Drew over at the United Way in the Twin Cities wrote. He kind of hit the phones early on and was reaching out to some of their larger supporters just to check in and say, hey, how are you doing? So, a lot of this is organization centric, but, reach out and show some empathy for the people that also support you. This is a nice sort of rubric for maybe how you should approach that kind of outreach. If you were to call all of your major donors, or maybe call all of your people that are in the midst of a multi-year pledge, for example, you can decide who is most valuable. But how are you doing? I want to update you on the organization for sure, but I also want to make sure that you're doing okay. People perhaps have lost their businesses or lost their jobs. I think it can go a long way in the long-term relationship to just show some concern, maybe from the ED or a board member to that small group of donors that perhaps is at the top of the pyramid. So check that out. It's a nice advice piece on how you should approach that if you feel that that's right for your organization. The personal touch. So I've showed you a lot of email and printed pieces, but it doesn't have to just end there. We were curious about this at Bloomerang. There's all this research out there. It tends to get thrown around at conferences and on webinars like this, and you kind of hear about it anecdotally that, oh yeah, we call our donors and it was really impactful. We had our board members call donors. And there is some scientific research out there. Penelope Burke does that great donor survey every single year where she interviews actual donors and kind of asks them, what is it that made you give more or keep giving? And you'll time and time hear things like, I got a personal contact from someone and that's what prompted the gift. And we definitely espouse these things, but we wanted to know, how is this actually happening kind of at scale amongst our customers? So in January, this is all pre-COVID data you're about to see, but I've got some post-COVID data for you afterwards. We wanted to know, okay, our customers who call their brand new donors, what impact does that actually have versus the customers who don't? And we were not totally surprised to see that there were differences. There were some successes there that kind of back up that anecdotal stories and data that kind of float around the sector. So we looked at, again, organizations who are calling new donors within 90 days to say thank you. The retention rates were higher. You go from a 33% retention rate without calling to 41 if you call once, and then to almost 60% if they called multiple times to say thanks or share a story or something like that. Those are huge improvements in retention. I mean, if you can go from 30 to 60% retention on brand new donors, that's going to be pretty significant over the lifetime. Not only were the retention rates higher, but that second gift size was almost doubled. You went from $50 to $100. Didn't seem to impact the dollar amount if you did call multiple times. But what was impacted by multiple thank you calls was the speed in which you got that gift. So you go from getting the second gift almost a whole year later down to 50 days later if you were kind of multiple times sharing stewardship. And Penelope Burke has always said board members are great to call. So maybe a board member calls within the first couple of days to say thank you. Maybe a couple of weeks later, the ED follows up with another thank you, another story, or an update piece or something like that. And voicemails are okay. That's always a top question we get. We did not differentiate in this data between voicemails and people who picked up. And most people are not going to pick up, right? Because they may not recognize your number, or they're busy, you cut them out at the wrong time. But voicemails are great. So a quick voicemail script, get it in the hands of your board members. Tell your board members every week, hey, these are the new donors we got. Can you lob in a call to them? If you have a high gift volume, that might be hard. But if you're only getting a couple new donors a week and they give you phone numbers, I would consider as an experiment trying to call them and just saying thank you. Now, don't go and try to track down a phone number or call somebody's employer. I wouldn't recommend that. But if you get a phone number, especially if it's unsolicited, that could be an invitation. You might want to reach out to that person. Interesting corroborating data from the analytical ones. They also found that first 90 days does seem to be a little bit of a honeymoon period for those new donors. So that second gift tends to be higher the faster you get it in. If you wait a year or more than a year, it tends to be a lower dollar amount. So stewardship, pile on the thank yous, get to know them. And then if you do a good job there, follow that template I had in a couple of slides back. But then if you ask for that second gift, I think it'd be more likely to get a larger gift if you do those things. Now, what about personal touch data during COVID? So we also looked at this. We looked at a random selection of customers who, again, seem to be doing really well, seem to be doing better than their counterparts, especially when you look kind of year over year. So we compared March and April of 2019 to March and April of 2020. And the organizations that called donors, that sent personal emails, so these are one-to-one emails. This is, opening up Gmail and writing an email from Stephen to Heather. Not a mass email, not like a MailChimp email blast. Text messages and in-person interactions. So I'll define in-person interactions that it kind of changed. It truly was in person in early March, but then it shifted towards kind of things like this, like a FaceTime call or a Zoom call where you're talking virtually one-on-one. We're seeing customers log those types of calls as an in-person interaction. But the organizations who did those things, you can see the revenue increases, 19%, 14%, 13%, 21% on the in-person side versus the same time period last year. And the folks who didn't do those things, they had declines, a 7% reduction if they didn't call, 25% reduction if they didn't send personal emails. Texts actually were up on both cases, which was odd. And then in-person was kind of flat. So we, again, have been recommending to people, this is a great time to pick up the phone and maybe call a monthly donor and just say, hey, thanks for being a monthly donor. You're keeping the lights on, literally. A one-to-one email. Hey, Stephen, just thinking about you. Wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on here. Want to check in with you, see how you're doing. and then text messages. And, you can probably do a variation of the examples I just shared there over text, maybe send a quick video or something like that. And so this was data through April, but we kept looking at it through the end of May even, and I'll have the June data pretty soon here. I'm recording this in July. It's always about a month behind. So check our blog for that data. But I would guess that these things would continue because social distancing hasn't really changed that much. I know some people kind of want to go outdoors, but a lot of people are stuck inside. Again, great time for this personal outreach, especially if maybe you've stopped direct mail. I know it's kind of hard to get direct mail out in some cases. Great time to pick up the phone. And it's always a good time to send these one-to-one emails. Much better than kind of an email blast that tries to be, all things to all people. And the in-person, don't let it stop you. Zoom is great. I think Zoom is free up until a point. FaceTime, Google Hangouts, most of that stuff is free or, pretty low cost. So don't be afraid, just because you can't take someone out to coffee doesn't mean that you can't each, brew a cup of coffee and have a 20-minute scheduled, Zoom chat. So I definitely encourage you to get that personal touch out the door. Another thing we're seeing, this isn't necessarily a COVID example, but we are seeing a lot of folks do this, and it kind of speaks to the in-person side, is video. The video, it's a great time to be recording, quick selfie videos on your phone, or maybe a webcam video like you're seeing me here, and reaching out to people. This isn't a COVID example, but I think it's something that you could do right now. A while back, late last year, I think it was a couple of Novembers ago, I started a monthly donation to this organization and got kind of a rote, boring receipt from them, kind of a template. But a couple of days later, I got a nice personal email. This is an example of a personal email where the director of development wrote me an email, from his Gmail or from his Outlook, and said, "Hey, thanks for the monthly commitment. We just want to recognize that you're keeping the lights on for us. I made you a quick thank you video." And it was this nice, 90-second long video. You can watch it later on if you want, where, Mike is just saying, "Hey, Stephen, hey, Leah, thanks so much for becoming a monthly donor. Just wanted to tell you what monthly donors do for our organization specifically." Told me this great story about how they take a couple hours every month for a strategy session and kind of look, kind of long-term into the organization. They stop working, they make time for it. And he kind of cleverly tied that to monthly donors as being kind of sustainable donors that allow them to do those things. So this could be your alternative to maybe a handwritten note. If you don't want to send mail, if you're maybe worried about people being nervous about getting mail, quick webcam video, a couple 90, 30 seconds, and I think make an impact there. So when you maybe double that with a personal email as the delivery system, I think that can be definitely very, very powerful. So let's wrap up talking about events. So I'm not going to do this justice because I'm going to kind of zoom through this because we're running out of time. But again, go back and watch those 8 case studies from earlier on, because all of them had this issue. They had an event that was in March or April. They had to make a quick decision. But what I heard from all of them was that they were decisive. They didn't say, we're going to postpone it to the fall and hope that it'll happen. Maybe some of you are already feeling that if you're watching this in the summer. You've got that September, October event coming up and you're kind of worried, is it going to happen? Well, these folks didn't put themselves in that position. So if you're looking at a September or October event and thinking maybe we should postpone to March, well, I don't know that things will be much better in March. Now, I'm not a doctor. Please don't take this as medical advice or public health advice. But what these folks did is they said, we're not going to do it in person. Keep the date. We're going to do something else. So we're going to do a virtual event. And these folks all did different types of virtual events. That's kind of a nebulous term sometimes. There are lots of different variations of how they did it. One organization I want to highlight real quick, watch the video again. What they did is they said, hey, we're not going to do it in person. Keep the date. They canceled it. It was a quick decision. They canceled their March 27th event in like the teens of March. So it was kind of a quick decision. They said, hey, keep it on your calendar because we got something special planned for you. And what they did from the date of the cancellation to the date of the event, which is like 12 or 14 days, is they took the content from the event. So all the speakers they were going to have, the stories they were going to tell, and they converted it into like a 6 or 7 touch email sequence with videos, with interactive links, where they were kind of doling out in drips and drabs the content of the event. And it all kind of culminated on the day that they were going to do it, which is when they announced that they had actually exceeded their fundraising goals, because all these emails had a call to action to become a donor. And they kind of celebrated it. They made a nice thank you video with the ED that said, wow, because of all of you, we hit our goal, even without having the event. And they were just elated because they didn't have, the stress and the headaches. I don't need to tell you all those things that go into having an event. They had some sunk costs, but not a lot, with some, the facilities and the food and stuff. But they loved it. They may never go back to in person. And it was a nice kind of creative pivot. But watch those stories, because you'll see lots of different examples of what folks did. Another thing that I'm seeing recommended is just go ahead and convert the ticket price to a donation, rather than saying, hey, we're going to refund you, but we would appreciate your donation. And they got to donate it back. Just say, hey, we have converted your ticket to a donation. If you don't want that to happen, let us know and we'll refund you. And 95% of people are going to be fine with that, especially if you do something kind of virtual to make up for it. So, don't worry about that too much. And if you want some examples of that communication, just email me and I'll share you some examples. But I think most of the people will be absolutely fine with that, because the ticket was probably already coded or was technically a donation, anyway. And hopefully those people are believers in you and supporters of you and want you to keep going, keep going in the future. So just some final thoughts to kind of reiterate what we talked about. Don't make the decision for donors. Let them decide, right? Fundraise. If you need help, you should ask for help. You should be fundraising right now. There's a lot of generosity. I mean, my Facebook feed even now is still full of people doing peer-to-peer fundraising. That's a big topic we didn't even talk about, but peer-to-peer is awesome right now. That could be a way to engage some of your supporters, maybe your volunteers who can't help you in that way, but could help you in other ways. But my original point is that there are a lot of people that are doing okay and can still support you and want to. So don't make the decision for them. You're all worthy of that support. If you do get that support, celebrate it. Geez, thanks so much, Stephen. I know it's a tough time out there, but you're still supporting us. Just wanted to thank you so much. Again, really double down on that stewardship. Pick up the phone, make a video, invite someone to a Zoom hangout, invite a small group, maybe your monthly donors to an exclusive Zoom hangout or something like that, a Facebook Live. Get them involved. People are kind of bored. I'm bored. I'm stuck at home. It's nice to be able to do webinars like this. It gives you something to do. Makes you feel like I'm being productive. But people can't go to the movies. It's hard even to go outside in some cases. So you may actually be giving them some entertainment. By now, we've all gone through Netflix, right? We've seen everything there is to see. So I think people are reaching for something to do, especially if you can make it entertaining, informative, emotional for sure. And with the events, be decisive. Don't postpone to the fall, because then it's just going to weigh over you for months. Don't cancel either. Say, hey, we're not going to do it in person, but keep the date. And then you can figure out what it is you're going to do. If you're going to do something on the date or, in the weeks leading up to it. We've got lots of examples on our website I'll share with you of some more case studies that people have done. But the running theme there was, it was just a relief when all those people said, okay, we're virtual. We're not going to try to, tempt fate or cross our fingers that this is going to get better. Let's just do something else. So if you like this webinar, we'll do some questions here in a second, but I'd love to connect with you afterwards. I actually host my own webinar series. You don't have to listen to me. I'll only do a brief introduction of some really smart people that I bring on every single week. It's totally free. Great guests, great topics, really interesting discussions. We've also got a special library of more COVID crisis fundraising examples on our website. We're covering virtual events, crisis appeals. We got templates and stuff there, case studies. Check it out. It's all free. You don't have to be a Bloomerang customer. We've also recently put together a library of diversity and equity and inclusion resources. Obviously a hot topic right now. I think nonprofits should be on the forefront of this work. So if that's something that maybe your organization struggles with or has never really tackled, we got lots of resources there to get you started. And if you're interested in Bloomerang, like I said, we're a donor database. People seem to like it. Maybe you will too. So if you're in the market, definitely check that out. You can find us online. You can watch all kinds of videos. But I would love, love, love to take your questions. If we don't get to your questions here, email me, or if you're watching a recording, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a tweet, and don't be shy. Even if you're watching this, months later, and then maybe you think something's changed that we should address. I would love to hear from you. So thanks for watching. Thanks for taking the time. Stay healthy, stay productive. We all need you out there. We need the work that you're doing, and we don't want it to stop. So we're all thinking about you here at Bloomerang, and we wish you the best. So thanks for listening.